Thank you all for joining our breakout session. My name is Nicole Montojo. I'm a staff researcher at the Othering and Belonging Institute. I'm joining you today from unceded Ohlone territory in what is known as Fremont, California, and the Bay Area. And this session is Bridging and Belonging in Neighborhoods, Transformative Change and Care Starting from the Block. And just for a visual ID, I describe myself as an Asian woman. I have dark brown hair and glasses, and I'm wearing a khaki sweater. And as we get started today, I invite you to introduce yourselves in the chat, where you're joining from, and in one or a few words, how would you describe your relationship with your neighbors? And I ask this question with no judgment. I just want to ground ourselves in thinking about the people who are our neighbors and how it is that we relate to them. And you'll see in the chat area where there has been a chat going on throughout the whole session, there's a section for session chat all the way at the right. And that's to chat just to the folks in this room. If you're in the event chat, that's going to go to everyone in the whole session. So just want to flag that. And we are waiting for one more panelist, so I'm going to keep an eye out for her. But in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our topic. So let's get started. So the challenges and crises that we're grappling with today are massive in scale. Climate change, the pandemic, othering, all of the things that we've been talking about across the past couple of days at this conference. So why start with the local? To ground this conversation, I want to share this quote from Adrienne Marie Brown. And she says, "Until we have some sense of how to live our solutions locally, we won't be successful at implementing a just governance system regionally, nationally, or globally." And she calls on us to see our own lives and work and relationships as a front line, a first place where we can practice justice, liberation, and alignment with each other and the planet. And our neighborhoods, or however it is that we refer to the local places that we collectively call home, are another front line. And what we practice here, as Adrienne writes, at a small scale sets the patterns for the whole system. And so bridging one-to-one, we can think of as a small-scale action that plants the seeds for belonging. And there's a lot of work to be done locally. Many of us are feeling isolated in our homes like never before. The neighborhoods in the US that we all live in are more segregated today than in the 70s. And larger systems have failed to provide for our basic needs. And again, the local is critical when it comes to these basic needs. I'm reminded of the work of Movement Generation, and they talk about how the impacts of emergencies like climate disasters, COVID, all of that are felt in place-based ways. And most of our material needs as living beings must be met at a local level. And I also want to acknowledge that the work of planting seeds to transform our systems comes from a deep lineage. Just to name a few, this includes the Black Panther Party's survival programs like Free Breakfast for School Children, which was integral to the broader movement that their work led. The disability justice movement's radical reimagining of care rooted in solidarity and collective responsibility. A long global history of mutual aid and organizing, and also ongoing work that many of our partners at OBI, including some folks who you may have heard from in yesterday's Learning Lab, like Richmond Land and the team that's working on the upcoming Cultures of Care project. Then and now, this work of radical care isn't easy. And our neighborhoods are complex ecosystems. So how do we understand what it means to know, care for, and bridge with our neighbors? And what does it take to connect work happening locally to systems change? And I'm thrilled to be in conversation with our inspiring set of panelists today who are engaging these questions in their local organizing and community building work. So I will introduce our panelists, and you can read their full bios on the conference website. Let me drop this into the chat. Sorry, trying to navigate around. That's where you can read everyone's bios in full, but I will do quick introductions right now. So first we have Andreina Nis. She has been an organizer with K-Town for All for the last 3 years, and she advocates for Koreatown's unhoused neighbors via community building, direct actions to influence local government, and direct mutual aid in the form of weekly outreach dispersing survival supplies. And next we have Dominique Walker. She is the co-founder and a member of Moms for Housing. She serves as a commissioner for the rent board in the city of Berkeley, while also organizing with Moms for Housing through advocacy, service, and policy to make housing a human right. Next, we have Alvina Wong. She is the campaign and organizing director at the Asian Pacific Environmental Network, and she fights the displacement of low-income and working-class Asian immigrants and refugees while building their leadership to fight for environmental justice through intergenerational organizing towards community governance and power. And we also have Sean Fisher here. They are a Southern Appalachian-based community organizer and activist, and much of their practices are informed by working with grassroots organizations focused on providing abolitionist-based safety and security, mutual aid, and disaster relief. And we have one more panelist that I'm hoping will join us, and I'm going to keep an eye out for her, Kanchan Dawn Hunter, who is the former co-director at Spiral Gardens. And so if she's able to join us, I'll have her introduce herself later on. So thank you all for being part of this conversation. You all are doing very different but very much aligned work. And I want to start by giving everyone here a chance to understand what the work that you do looks like. So we'll start with each of you taking about 5 minutes to introduce your work. And the question that I've posed to all of the panelists is, how is bridging, or this idea of building a bigger we, important to your work and vision? And in thinking about how we go about this in practice, what's one daily or regular practice that you do that helps to advance this vision? So we'll go in the order that I introduce y'all, if that's all right. So Andreina, we'll start with you, and then we'll go to Dominique, Alvina, and then Sean.
Hi, good morning, everyone. As Nicole said, my name is Andreina. I am coming in from Los Angeles, the Koreatown neighborhood. Visually, I am a Mexican woman with big black curly hair, wearing a black shirt. My pronouns are she, hers. Um, I volunteer and organize with an organization called K-Town for All. As Nicole mentioned, we do direct outreach with our unhoused neighbors. We advocate for them politically and try to empower them to advocate for themselves, as well as attempt to change the narrative when conversations about unhoused folks are being had in Los Angeles. My daily action I take to increase the scope of the we is having conversations with our unhoused neighbors. Koreatown is one of the most highly populated neighborhoods in the entire country, if not the world. We have one of the highest densities per square block, which means that there are a lot of people also experiencing homelessness. There are a lot of people that used to live in a lot of these apartments who now can no longer afford them because of gentrification and price increases. Um, so a lot of the people that used to live in the neighborhood as housed people now live in the neighborhood as unhoused people. And we think that's a very important connection to make to people that are housed. Um, is that a lot of the unhoused people on the streets now used to be your house neighbors, and they still are your neighbors. They just don't have four walls around them, and connecting the value they have, the help they need, breaking through the kind of dehumanizing propaganda being pushed by local government and the media, is something that we are very passionate about, building relationships with these people, communicating about issues rather than relying on police force and or like city sanitation enforcement, which can be violent and destructive for folks. Um, that's kind of a bit of the synopsis. Another kind of including the we, as we said, is we mobilize to push through a less violent perspective at city council meetings. We're calling in, we're showing up to protest, we're mobilizing. We're keeping an eye on local city ordinances. We're doing all sorts of uh, advocacy at every level we can to fight back this dehumanization and othering. Um, so that's a little bit about me. A tiny action that I would suggest other people do as well is carry a water bottle, maybe an extra sweater, a blanket in your car, offer it to someone. If you make a big meal and have extras, put it in a little Tupperware. Receiving a hot meal is always very nice when you're outside. Um, and I think that in itself starts really good relationships. You have communications with someone living on your street. Um, and that will come in handy in a lot of ways in the future. And it goes a long way in forming a neighborhood relationship.
Thank you, Andreina. Let's pass it on. I forgot the order I said. Dominique, would you like to share next?
Yes. Hi, I am Dominique Walker, visually, she, her. Visually, I am of African descent. I have on a yellow shirt and medium length locks. And I am the co-founder of Moms for Housing. Our vision started with this one house. A group of Black mothers, we came together and we occupied a house owned by a speculator. And a little history of Oakland, like 70% of the population that of homelessness is African American, previously housed and lost their homes due to a speculative market. It was always our goal not only to gain housing for ourselves, but to help other homeless mothers. Right now we got the house, so we were able to purchase it and put it into a land trust where it will be permanently affordable. And now we're getting ready to welcome 2 new families into the house as a part of a pilot program. We also are working through policy change. Moms for Housing has an inspired policy, TOPA, Tenants Opportunity to Purchase Act. It would give tenants the first right of refusal to be able to purchase. And if they can't purchase, they can have a community organization such as a land trust to purchase on their behalf. So the land would remain permanently affordable. And this is a way to combat displacement and the speculative market, not only in Oakland, but there's a similar policy in several different areas, but also in Berkeley. We are currently starting off with 2 families. We have a pilot program where we're looking for a building to house 25 mothers. And not only like housing is the basis, the stability, the foundation that you need to be able to do anything else. And we're focused on that, but it's not only that. We plan to have childcare for the moms, business incubators, education. We're working with Rising Sun, which is a construction company, which will be training our mothers to do construction, and mental health support. It's a whole system, whole wellness, and that's a part of what we're committed to as far as fighting for housing as a human right. And also, I'm a rent board commissioner, and a part of what we're doing in Berkeley is protecting tenants right now. We govern rent control, and we had to fight for extra protection for our tenants during the pandemic that are at risk of eviction because they're not able to pay rents. And also, I think about the bridging, like, of different intersections, and housing is health. So a part of what we're also doing, and what I'm doing, is working with Deep Medicine Circle, and they're growing food, and they're committed to decolonizing food and medicine, starting with our indigenous brothers and sisters. It's a women of color led nonprofit that's growing food for the community, and that's radical. That's the most radical thing you can do is grow food, organic food for the community. So that is some of the work that we are a part of. Oh, I'm sorry. And the one practice I would say is centering yourself when you come into spaces with community. You have to be centered. You have to know the reason you're there, and you have to be a student and listen to the folks that are marginalized. That's where the answers lie, and that's where the power is.
Thank you, Dominique. Pass it to Alvina.
Good morning, everyone. Coming in from Chochenyo Ohlone lands of Fujian, also known as Oakland. Visually, I'm an Asian Chinese woman with mid-length side braid black hair, wearing a black turtleneck patterned with white lines. So I'm the campaign and organizing director at the Asian Pacific Environmental Network. We really got our roots started in Richmond, California, organizing Laotian refugees and really thinking about the intersections of environmental racism, poverty, and our immigrant and refugee communities. And from there, we also expanded to Oakland, where I've done a lot of my work, and really seeing environmental justice, being able to talk about our environment as our planet, the air we breathe, the water we drink, but also the people in it, and really looking at the intersections of those distinctions, and recognizing when our communities are facing challenges or displacement, as is really rampant in the whole Bay Area. Those are things that destabilize our communities and destabilize our environment and actually make us unhealthy, while we also have to survive with a lot of polluting sources, whether that's actual major factories or refineries like Chevron, or the way that the freeways and one-way streets cut through our neighborhoods and cause a lot of air pollution. In a lot of our work, a lot of my work, particularly in Oakland, Chinatown, we organize our communities, mostly low-income working class immigrants, Chinese immigrants in Oakland, again, Laotian refugees and Southeast Asians in Richmond. And really, we're working towards the vision that everyone deserves a healthy, clean, and safe environment to live, work, play, and thrive. And within that, we really see our role as building community within our own Asian immigrant and refugee community, for the sake of being able to build a larger community and build towards a larger environmental justice movement that is multiracial, that is multi-sectoral, that is very intersectional in all the different issue areas that relate to our environment, our homes, and the way that we have and get to stay in community with each other. So on the day-to-day in Oakland, you'll see us organizing in Chinatown for more affordable housing, for better parks and open space, really advocating for our neighborhood preservation as an ethnic enclave. And I think in Richmond, really looking at corporate responsibility to our public health, air quality, and whatnot, and making sure that within all of that, there is adequate and fair language access to our communities so that they get to stay informed of what's happening in their surroundings. Really also remembering that a lot of us have very different migration stories to and from within the US, and that there are a lot of times where our ability to stay within community with each other was forced and predetermined location and geography because of US military and imperialism. So I think that in relation to all of our work is really thinking about how do we center our people within our environment so that we actually have a chance and a way to not just survive through the multiple challenges that our communities are facing, but actually reach a place of a more balanced ecosystem, a more healthy ecosystem that allows for future generations to continue thriving. And I would say that in thinking through bridging and what do we do on the everyday, echoing the other panelists, I think there are a lot of little things that can happen, and that's how we build the endurance and sustainability over time. And really, with the benefit of being able to work in Chinatown most days, I really try, even if it's just for like a couple dollars, like stopping by small businesses and supporting them, and making sure that our local small businesses see their customers, and in that also getting a chance to talk with the workers. If you've ever been in Chinatown and want to try working through the language and cultural barriers, I really encourage it. Just kind of stand by different piles of fruits or vegetables and see the auntie or your cousin around and just say, oh, what dish do you make with this ingredient? And start those conversations. And those are kind of the small ways that you just start to be able to acknowledge someone else's humanity and also be able to be seen in your own humanity too.
Thank you, Alvina. Sean, let's go to you next.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, really happy to be here. Just a visual description of myself is that I'm white, assigned male at birth, non-binary individual with short brown hair, wearing a dark green hooded sweatshirt. My pronouns are they and them, and I'm a member of the Highlander Research and Education Center's Community Safety Team. I live in occupied Cherokee and Shawnee territory in eastern Tennessee, and I've lived in southern Appalachia for much of my life. And I feel that the work that I do really finds its roots deeply in the historical actions of my regional community and even the 90 years of action Highlander has facilitated for our movement for liberation. Acts of solidarity that have been built across race, gender, prison walls to imagine and struggle for new possibilities. So kind of wanted to invite folks in to envision a world with me where regardless of the actions of a few, of a state, of illegitimate or misguided authority, that our communities are autonomous and adaptable, where our strength comes from and is rooted in accountable action that prioritizes the most impacted and those with the necessary ancestral knowledge. Where we've built systems of support and abundance that reconnect us with the natural world, meet our mental and physical health needs, meet our familial and educational needs, our food needs, our expressive and artistic needs. And we have erected a broad community that is capable of not just defending ourselves from threats, be they internal or external, but a reimagining of what holistic safety, security, and community stability looks like. And this is just some of the stuff that I get to do at Highlander. Bridging and connecting across lines of differences, perceived or evident, it's absolutely necessary for this work because our strengths really come from much more than what we ourselves are capable of. Our communities, our history, our ability to simply support and survive the economic and climate chaos that's staring us down is going to require us to break through isolation. And that could be the isolation of colonial settlerism, white supremacy, and capitalism, or the isolation of what really is just an atomizing and overwhelming reality where our neighbors have become strangers and perceived threats instead of partners in struggle, rage, and survival. So mutual aid became a focal point of my organizing and community work because I saw firsthand how the ability to meet people where they're at, to show up as simply equals in a struggle for survival, is an absolute effective means in moving past perceived differences. Some communities and people have known this truth for generations, while others are only figuring it out now in times of disaster. the COVID-19 pandemic for me really highlighted how far removed we are from this very ambiguous concept of community that we talk about a lot. It made me recognize that both within myself and with those around me, that most people's support systems don't even come from their neighbors, but they come, but are more likely to be spread out through cities, regions, or even global support networks. Our pods aren't necessarily the block that I live on or the building I live in. And this truth is really built within concepts of survival and chosen kin. And so I want to recognize that and the power that that is, but it also can exacerbate our ability to survive the day-to-day disaster of a decaying empire. So it's important to me to think about ways in which we can reconnect those lines of affinity with people that are most able to provide support. So as a daily practice, I love my neighborhood. I love my neighbors. And as a daily practice, I can't stress it enough, the importance and need for just communication and friendliness. I feel friends are a much less authoritarian kind of construct of relationship. We can have friends, lose them, not see them for 20 years, come back to them and pick up. And so I just really stress like a relationship that is based in friendliness. So I regularly visit and talk with my immediate neighbors. I make time to listen and engage. We're always in this kind of struggle to get to some place, to do something, to accomplish some task. And I can't stress the importance of actually taking time to recognize that growing a garden with the intention of sharing your food, to talk about like current events or to talk even about the weather is absolutely important. Much of the safety that I define within my household comes from my ability to trust that there are 5 other households of folks around me that know me, that trust me, and call me friend. So recognizing how like runaway rent, gentrification, possibly language and cultural differences, work schedules, relationships, all provide delays in building this, I think it still remains absolutely necessary, because I feel that change that is required comes from the practice of continuous accountability. So when we take the time, when we talk to each other, when we show up, when we cut someone's yard, bring them an extra tomato or something like that, what we're doing is we're being accountable to each other. And as incremental as it may be, kind of leaning into that like analogy that was presented at first, entire fields can be sown with just like one seed at a time. So I really want to stress that.
Thank you, Sean. And I want to welcome Kanchan Don Hunter. Thank you so much for joining us. You are just in time. I'll do a quick introduction of you and then I'll pass it over for you to share about your work. So I mentioned Kanchan is the former director or co-director at Spiral Gardens, where she served for 15 years. She is an herbalist, agroecologist, community organizer, educator, grower, and a proud earth steward, as well as a mother of 3 grown children and 3 grandchildren. So welcome, Kanchan. We're just finishing the go around and would love to hear a little bit about your work and how you envision this work of bridging and building a bigger we in your practice.
Thank you so much for having me. And I'm so sorry it took me forever to figure this thing out. And I've been playing with it, but it's like, oh, you just don't do it until you get it, until you're there. Thank you for having me. It's good to see everybody's face, and just I got to hear a little bit of what you were saying just now, and just want to honor this work that everyone is doing out there in the world. Bless your whole hearts. Yes. So yes, I've been the co-director at Spiral Gardens for 15 years, helping to, my main focus was building community, especially centering folks of color, especially impoverished folks, people that don't necessarily get access to information about food justice and food sovereignty, really trying hard to really build community around using local soil available to us through the city of Berkeley. We were able to lease that land and invite a lot of folks into that space. A lot of folks went on to become landscapers, growers, and gardeners, earth stewards in their own right. And so really proud of being able to reach out to folks that don't normally get called into that conversation and that practice. And so yeah, I am the Black co-director, recent co-director. Daniel Miller's the original co-founder, and we became partners both in life and also in work. And my main feeling was that, you know, you can't just land a community garden in a community of color without actually interfacing with the people directly. And so it just was clear to me that as a Black woman serving Black and Brown community members, I felt the need to be that person. So I began to organize practice days, free classes, really honing in people's earth skills, you know, whether it be soil building, worm composting, caring for chickens and ducks, growing all kinds of food together, but especially engaging in the planning process of what we want to eat, what we want to grow, what do folks like to grow and or want to learn about engaging that practice. So I made it very much my mission to help support that educational process. And as the neighborhood became more gentrified and all of our Black and Brown neighbors began to be pushed out of South Berkeley, I made it very clear that we needed to do more targeted outreach. So started working through organizations that serve communities of color, especially Black and Brown led organizations that, you know, really were about bringing more folks of color into this conversation about food justice and environmental justice and food sovereignty. And so I, you know, that's how we were able to start reaching more people that look like me and all of us to be able to stay engaged in the projects at Spiral Gardens, because it was becoming very much populated by the new neighbors, you know, who wanted to be, it's so cool to grow food and, oh yeah, oh, a community garden, you know, and community gardens in general can be a tool for good organizing, but it can also be a gentrifying tool. And I made certain that that is not what Spiral Gardens was going to be about, or continues to not be about, even though we will take the gentrifiers' money to support the project going on. We do not center, you know, a white-led, you know, space. We center folks of color, queer folks, youth in general, you know, doesn't matter their background at all, but, you know, because we believe that the children are going to carry this work forward in a good way, if taught well and given the agency and the opportunity to learn and grow together as a community. So yeah, planning and creating that space has been at the heart of my work at Spiral Gardens. So I'm not sure if I'm supposed to say more.
Thank you, Kanchan. I'd ask you to elaborate. You talk a lot about the importance of land in your work. And so in your own life, how does your relationship to place and land shape your work?
Yeah, well, it's everything for me. You know, I honestly can say confidently that I've never done work that I didn't believe in or love. I knew that it would kill me if I ever allowed myself to be in those spaces. And it just so happens that working with land, working with earth, and working with community about that feeds my soul in important ways. I've raised my children to understand earth and all of her generosity, you know, and how important it is for us to learn to work together with her. It informs everything in my entire life. I'm currently living in El Sobrante, California, on a piece of land that's been stewarded here for a number of years. And we're just in the process of transforming who gets to participate in this type of land, in these types of spaces. And you know, folks of color have been stripped of land over the years, particularly our Native communities have been stripped of land and put places where it was more convenient for this, whatever this government is, you know, for them, you know. And so for me, I feel like, you know, returning agency, returning access, returning educational processes, and just anything I can teach others about that, you know, things that I've learned that have saved my life on numerous levels. That's what I'm here for. But yes, it's the earth for me all day, every day. You know, she's our mother. We'd have nothing without her. And so for me, she's my chosen deity. And I worship her like a goddess. So I like to incorporate that conversation to a degree, but also mainly I say to people, and especially young people, you know, deepening your connection with earth. If you have access to some land, even a pot of soil, even, you know, you can grow something, and that increases your knowledge of earth processes, how she works for us, with us. And when we work with her, co-create with her, it is our chance to really be in alignment and in attunement with her. So it's, for me, it makes me feel safe to know that I have this great, beautiful creature called Earth on my side.
Thank you so much for sharing. Sean, my question for you, I've heard you describe one of the principles of mutual aid as meeting people where they're at. Can you talk about what that means in practice for your work, and how has it changed the way that you think about organizing or movement building or systems or political change?
Yeah, that concept of meeting people where they're at, I think really cuts through and provides a framework kind of outside of a more familiar model for a lot of folks, which centers charity. So charity as like a hierarchical process in which wealth and really elite individuals get to kind of dictate access and resources. And so what mutual aid does, and mutual aid in the context of disaster relief. So if that's a hurricane, or if that's a fire, if that's in Appalachia, the disaster of the opioid epidemic, or of different crises that we may be experiencing, regardless if they're called a disaster or not, is going to those folks as individuals. Oftentimes people that have also like experienced the same thing one way or another. I've lost a number of people in my life to opioids, right? And I've known folks that are unhoused, and I've experienced unhoused, like being unhoused myself and having to depend on others. And so what we do is we just come as equals. And so I think it's a tiny distinction, but it plays a major role. We don't define people's ability to access our resources based on their identities or what they may have done or are doing. We just show up to support. And I think when people see that, when people recognize that you're there not to impose something, but to simply work beside with them, they become much more open. And so in the context of organizing, especially in like rural Western North Carolina, where I was living when I first really got to like experience this, it was just a matter of being in the community that I was working in. It was a matter of first asking folks what they needed, not telling them what they needed. And it allowed me to break through folks that oftentimes have different political viewpoints from me, or different types or concepts of reality. And not to say that we accept everybody, right? There's opinions and viewpoints and thoughts that are just unacceptable based on a value and a moral basis. But I think for a lot of folks, actually these kind of are defining them in these moments, are outside of these moments, are pretty shallow, and they're open to change, and they're open to opportunity, they're open to listen and conversation. And so when we're able to just come to folks as equals and as people who have experienced the same thing, living through the same thing, without an ability to impose onto people, it allows us to really connect and to deepen and build with each other. And it's long-term incremental work, but it's important work still the same.
Thank you, Sean. Alvina, I have a related question for you on this topic. So the notion of meeting our community members where they're at can be complicated because, as we all know, our communities are not monolithic. So how do you hold this complexity in your organizing work when some members of your community may have very different positions on, for example, how to achieve community safety? Is there room for bridging in these instances? And if so, what does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, just kind of riffing off of Sean a little bit, I feel like a lot of our work in environmental justice, but also in community building and anti-displacement work is how do we move at the pace of trust, and how do we move at the pace of our ecosystem? There's a natural rhythm that our earth moves in, that so much of our life, whether it's the plants and trees and water or even us as humans, also cycle through. And in this hyperalized, racialized capitalism, we're forced to move at a different pace that actually breaks trust, breaks bridges, and burns bridges a lot easier and faster than it does to bridge. And I think about that in terms of, in the United States context of being Asian Pacific Islander, which is a huge swath of geography. It only really makes sense to have that as a racial category here. And when our immigrant and refugee communities come and have multiple generations of, immigration status and citizenship, there's just so many different experiences that are being forced together. And in some ways, we find community by those who look like us, we find community by those who can speak the same language as us, and we find community by those who eat the same things as us. And so I think about that in the concept as well of like meeting people where they're at. It's like there has to be curiosity for each other. There has to be curiosity about your lived experiences, and an accountability to say, in that curiosity and relationship building of wanting to know more about you, I also want you to know about me. And that relies on us to also risk exposing and risk vulnerability to say, like, this is what I believe in. This is what my experiences have taught me. I'm not so wedded to them and linked that I cannot change that idea, but it's going to take some time and some consideration and some different types of relationships that I'm not used to in order for me to understand and broaden that. And I think in this moment, a lot of, I think there's been a lot of talk around Chinatowns and anti-Asian violence and all these things that take away or center that conversation on over policing, and center that conversation on an assumption that we all think the same and that we all have the same experiences, and also centers that conversation without the context of being in a US imperialist colonized nation state that has created a lot of genocide on indigenous communities and slavery on our African American and Black communities. And so with all that said, you don't have those types of conversations on the street day to day with your neighbors, just, oh, hey, by the way, how do you feel about, imperialism? It more so comes out as like, hey, how are you feeling today? And they might say, oh, I feel really scared. I feel really scared. I don't know when I'm going to get hit next. I don't know when I'm going to get robbed next. I don't know if I should even leave my house. I think this moment in the pandemic has intensified that tenfold. But even before that, it was like, I'm sorry you feel scared, but I see you. Do you want to walk together? Do you want to keep talking? And I find myself in our work, oftentimes there's enough similarity and common ground that we can walk together. And there's a point in which we walk together and then there's disagreement, or there's a little bit of tension or friction. And then the question is, do we have enough invested in each other? And do we have enough vision for the world that we want to build that I'm going to, work that friction until it feels smooth again, and that we can keep walking and keep getting to the next step. I think it's really, it fits a purpose. It fits white supremacy and heteropatriarchy for us to fight. And so media and other spaces will sensationalize that and use those little pieces of disagreement and rip them apart. And then our communities and our folks feel like I'm either on this side or I'm on this side. when in fact the way that we live is very much in a very gray area of like, I say yes and feel very passionately about this, and I don't really agree with that, but I'm okay with it. And a lot of those, again, like really are based in experiences. So in a lot of our community building work, you know, in addition to bringing folks together on common issues like affordable housing, like improving parks and open space, or improving air quality, or bringing folks together in commonality, what's really critical is that we also do leadership development, that we have these hard conversations that you normally wouldn't want to have. You know, I think in some of our cultures and societies, there's like the list of things you don't talk about at dinner, right? So then when do you talk about those things? When do you make the space and time to bring folks together and have it be a safe and open space where all the viewpoints are respected, and recognize that there's gonna be a lot of viewpoints brought up. And one of my favorite ground rules is oops, ouch, snap, which is to say like, oh, there's an acknowledgement here that I might have said something that may have landed on you a different way, but can we dig a little bit deeper? And now we have a space and a facilitator to allow us to say like, my intention was not that, even though I recognize this was my impact, and then build from there. Or you say, ouch, like, you know, acknowledging that those words or that viewpoint was actually hurtful. And how do you actually get to be seen in the pain or the hurt that you've just experienced, and not have to wash it away or pretend like it didn't happen, or just go through the day like that wasn't actually a hurtful statement, but have some time and space where people get to dialogue about that, and you get to be seen in your experience. And then the snap is always like, you just never know who your people are until you're with them, and you say the right thing and it's just like, oh, it resonates, it's so good, you know. And how do we create more time and space for those conversations to happen, and have that be critical to our organizing work? So while we are very much fighting for equitable development and believing and working on projects like TOPA, the Tenant Opportunity Purchase Act that Dominique was mentioning earlier, or equitable development where we make sure that there is fair and deeply affordable housing in any new development project, that while we're doing those projects together, because that's where we have common ground, we also make the time and space to break bread and have conversation about anti-Blackness in our communities, have time and space to talk about Indigenous sovereignty in this concept of also thinking through like how we win this campaign for more affordable housing in this project, you know? And so I think those are the ways that we build bridges, and those are the ways we really have to listen to each other and say like, I hear that you want more policing, but I also hear that you want more safety. At the heart of it, you just don't want to walk out on the street feeling scared. And can you also recognize that having more police creates more fear and lack of safety for other folks that may not look and feel like you? And so those are the conversation starters, and then we have to keep committing to work together for the bigger vision.
Thank you, Alvina. I really appreciate that. So Dominique, throughout this conference, we've been talking about taking risks to bridge and to build a different future. And through Moms for Housing, you've taken a lot of risks in civil disobedience, risking arrest and eviction. And we've also talked about how even running for elected office is a risk. So how do we need to be rethinking what we're willing to risk on behalf of our communities and movements?
It's really interesting because I'm asked this question a lot, especially like during the occupation, like, what about the kids? And to me, I think about what's going to happen if I don't stand up, if I don't do these things. And that's it for me. So after that, it's really no fear. And it's, and especially during the occupation, it really showed us the support that this was absolutely necessary to our community to take this stand. So I would encourage folks to put some skin in the game, as they say, and really, really stand up, because that's the only thing that's going to change, is us taking risks for our communities, and also seeing ourselves in our communities and seeing the urgent need. Like if you walk through Oakland and see the tents, like we walked, we organized, it started grassroots, house to house, encampment to encampment, talking to folks, and even talking to our house neighbors. And they would say that there's too many vacant homes. We wish that families would move into this home. So yeah, it's not even taking the risk, it's doing what's necessary to change the community. And I also want to echo on what Sean was saying about the little things you do to build those relationships, and finding the commonalities, like Alvina was saying, because we're working together with TOPA. And I know Kashan, I've been in and out of your house as a teenager. One of those grown kids is one of my best friends. So just seeing you growing food in a neighborhood, being a Black woman, is inspiring. And that's how you cultivate the next generation, because now I'm learning about soil and I'm interested in growing food. And that all came from small things that I've seen around me, and the importance of that is so important.
Thank you, Dominique. Andreina, your work involves both direct aid and political advocacy. And for everyone on this panel, you all have talked about how to transform larger systems that are barriers to belonging. So how do you weave this work of caring for your community and nurturing one-on-one relationships together with policy change? And can you talk about what the relationship is between the two and what's needed to connect this change on the individual and personal level with institutions or systems change?
Yeah, of course. Particularly right now in LA, I was telling Nicole when we talked about this earlier this week, if you all tune in to a city council meeting where they're discussing this like anti-homeless legislation, like the sleep lie sit bans, the special enforcement zones, basically you can't be unhoused within, 400 feet of a bridge, school, hospital, just like it basically makes existing as an unhoused person illegal. You can't sit in the city of LA now, like it's illegal to sit. When all of these policies are being pushed through, um, it's because of the government has been pushed by people who have been sold a solution to a problem that exists, but haven't been told that that's not going to fix anything. We have people who are frustrated because the sidewalks are blocked. And I totally understand that frustration. Like it's annoying to not be able to walk on a sidewalk. And instead of thinking like, well, why are there so many people on this sidewalk? We should get them into housing. People are like, we need more sweeps. We need people to take their stuff and then they won't be on the sidewalk. There's needles everywhere. There's human feces everywhere. Instead of thinking like, why doesn't the city, if they know a big group of people live here, why don't they put up porta potties? Like, why don't they have a needle disposal program? Instead of thinking of those solutions, people are like, we need the cops to come. We need these people arrested, and we need these people dispersed. We've heard horrible things like we need to ship them to camps in the desert where they can get their shit together, pardon my language, but like it's framed as these people are lazy. There's plenty of housing for them, they just don't want to take it. Being service resistant is very popular vocabulary right now. These people don't even get me started, but recently there was massive sweeps at local LA parks, Echo Park, MacArthur Park, and the city council people are running around saying, look at this form. A social worker went there 50 times last month. And look at these people still being out there. And then you talk to the people and they tell you, well, I'm on the Section 8 waiting list, as I have been for the last 8 years. A social worker stopping by and saying, hello, folks, how are you doing? And me being like, well, still on the waiting list, and then leaving does nothing. That visit doesn't count for anything. But what the people hear is there have been social workers at that location 50 times last month. And these people are still out here destroying your neighborhood. So when we offer the other perspective of these people are on all the waiting lists, they have filled out all the paperwork, or your last sweeped away their medication, now they're having a psychosis episode. Their last sweeped away their ID, so now they can't apply for any of these programs because you need an ID. All these programs require an address, so they can't get mail, and it can't be a PO box. God forbid it's a PO box. It has to be a fixed address. So they can't get food stamps. Demystifying what being unhoused is like, demystifying what applying for these programs are like, is very important, because these people, the community is being sold through the media, through our governance right now, that there's plenty of housing, that there's plenty of food, that there's plenty of options for these people. They're just not taking it. They want to live this this bohemian lifestyle and not play by the rules like the rest of us. So what we try to do is elevate their voices, meet their basic needs through direct outreach, and listen to them. We have um, none of us are social workers. Well, some of us are, but like they volunteer, so they're not like on the clock or anything. We have random jobs. Our entire team. We have people who work in the film industry. We have bartenders. We have nurses. We have teachers. We have everyone, grocery clerks, literally everyone under the sun doing this volunteer work. And we've had to learn how to like fill out these request forms. We've had to blow up people's phones when like someone drops the ball, like how there is no social safety net. There's not even a wire. There's not even a piece of floss, there's no net. And explaining that to people is really important. And pointing out solutions that the unhoused community is telling us will work for them. And, for example, there's been an outbreak of fires. And obviously, that's a concern for the entire neighborhood. Fires are dangerous, fires can spread. People, on Nextdoor and all these like toxic apps will call for these people to be arrested. They should be arrested for arson. And in talking to camps, we learned that a lot of new people have become unhoused because of the coronavirus pandemic, losing jobs, etc. So a lot of people have become newly homeless, and they don't know you're not supposed to cook with the little gas stoves in your tent. It's as simple as that. There were brand new people, there were cooking inside their tent that didn't know you're not supposed to do that. So education is important. They told us they wanted, fire extinguishers to have at local camps. We took some out there. We've taken out needle boxes. We've badgered the city council to put out hand washing stations. And guess what? When you have garbage bins next to these camps that are producing garbage, people put the garbage in there. Like, it's as simple as that. But there is a vested interest in getting rid of these people, like out of sight, not serviced, not getting rid of them as them becoming housed, as in just like people not having to see them. And it does make people uncomfortable to see people living in such poverty, that it comforts people to really believe that it is a personal failure. And we're basically saying this is not a personal failure. There's 60,000 people. That's 2019 numbers, because there was no 2020 unhoused person count in LA. So that was pre-COVID. There was 60,000 unhoused people, which is a severe undercount. There's 4 people a day this year dying of being unhoused in LA. We used to have a 3 a day in LA campaign. Now that number's 4. So connecting the dots between mortality and being unhoused, connecting the dots to actual solutions. What can we do to make the neighborhood a safer, cleaner space, while also acknowledging that our neighbors are unhoused and they have the right to exist safely as well, and that there is no solution for an unhoused person other than giving them housing. And that the systems we have currently to service them are, Sean mentioned the hierarchical model of service, where It really discriminates against disabled people. It discriminates against monolingual people. If you're undocumented, you basically have zero options for affordable housing. If you are addicted to substances, a lot of these places are sober homes that will, throw you into withdrawal without any medical treatment. Not a very favorable solution. Shelters can be dangerous, and they've had outbreaks of COVID because they're congregate shelters. The systems that we're using are just not working. And
Thank you, Andreina.
Oh, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
No, sorry.
Sorry to interrupt you. I realize we're over time, and I wish we had many more hours to continue talking about this. And I wish we had more time for you all to ask each other questions. But I want to wrap us up with everyone. If you all also would like to share your thoughts on this question, what is needed to connect the individual or personal level change with institutional or systems change?
I can jump in, just say, I just want to appreciate everyone's voice here. Y'all are so smart to be so young, just proud. So yeah, you young people, beautiful, powerful organizers, creating amazing spaces for everyone around you. Just so grateful for your work. Keep that up. I can definitely think of a number of people that could throw money at your work that helps it go further. I think it supports community healing when we work together. Everyone's got so much to do. I'm retired now, so I can volunteer. I think it helps to have people involved, especially those people that aren't normally asked to be involved, like those folks who are houseless and those folks who are scared. And like all of you said, all the mothers and the children, bringing everybody's voice into the conversation as much as possible, which I know you're already doing, and just, keeping that. And keep yourself hydrated and well rested. Yeah, take good care of yourselves as well, and I'll try and do the same. But I'm retired, so I'm well on the way. But yes, and if you need me, holler at me, Dominique. I'm still around. Holla. Thank you all for your work. Thank you.
Alvina, Dominique, or Sean, would you like to share your thoughts on this question?
And share my thoughts as it relates to like being formerly unhoused and now being an elected official, the transition. And I think a lot of it, when you're in these spaces, the language that is used is not relatable to the folks that is supposed to help. So I think a lot of it is breaking that down, and me being in that space, like I'm breaking it down for myself, and then to break it down for tenants to understand like what their rights are and how they can access the services at the rent board. And I think representation is only positive when you're a servant of the people, because you can look like me and be in office and work totally opposite of what the people need. So I think people who haven't had that opportunity, like as myself, I never thought that I would ever be in an elected position. But when I moved to Berkeley, the folks were like, can you help us? Like run for rent board, do something. Like the Black population in Berkeley is almost non-existent. And I thought I was moving to Black Berkeley. That's what they told me. And I got there and I'm like, I'm hearing stories of folks not able to stay and have moved completely. So I think it's really important to be in those spaces and breaking down that language for folks, so they understand and can get behind actual policy that's going to change, but it's also policy and direct action.
Thank you, Dominique. We still have almost all the people we started with. So Alvina and Sean, I know we're over time, but if you've got a few moments to also share your thoughts, I'd love for you to be able to speak them.
I'll just jump in with a couple of thoughts on bridging that. I think big systems change do require small personal changes. And I think we can't overemphasize individual change over the system's change, which is what a lot of greenwashing does, which is to say, use your tote bags and stop buying bottled water and that'll save the planet. And it's actually like, no, stop the corporations that are producing all these things that are hurting our planet. But in order for us to see the bigger changes, you do need to experiment in the microcosm. You need to have the community gardens on this block and then that block and then that block and keep building the network broader and broader. And in all of that, I think what's really critical is also thinking about co-governance more and not just relying on just getting our electeds or decision makers to make the right choice, but actually spreading that decision to all of us and not relying on just one person or a body of 10 or 15 people. And in the process of getting there, having folks like Dominique on the rent board is so critical. And, you know, challenging our own perspectives on like, oh, I would never do that. But actually, if I took that step, one, it's not by myself, it's really with the community. And once I'm in there, how do I open up those channels and decision-making pieces for more people? And then I think a lot, I'm just sitting with, you know, what other folks are saying on the panel around like, how do we continue to make the right-sized contributions and not just sacrifices? And that's not to say that it's either or that there's one that's better than the other. There's no judgment in that. But I think for me, I think about contributions are things that include us, includes me in that full picture, because I am a part of the community too. Whereas sacrifices, I think, is, you know, the over-romanticized way is to just give all of yourself until you're not there anymore. And I think if we want to have a real sustainable, regenerative world and community, we have to continue to see ourselves in that big picture and keep moving together in that way where we can really build more interdependence, more relationship, more togetherness and collectivity, instead of just bouncing from one person to another, one leader, and feeling like it's all on me or nothing.
Thank you, Alvina. Would you like to share?
Yeah, I think it's, you know, like kind of echoing this idea of local and even the work that we do at our individual and our neighborhood level, because you know, like 1,000, like you could throw a bunch of pebbles into the water and it's going to produce a lot more waves, and that like our actions have ripple effects outward. And I think that the ability to continue regardless of what we kind of know, right? Like the state is violent and they will do absurd and violent things in order to maintain power or maintain a legitimacy of an illegitimate system. And that could be the neoliberal left, the isolationist right, it doesn't matter. And so like what is really important is that we continue these small actions regardless of that truth, and that we build, you can call it autonomously, you can call it dual power, you can call it survival programs, but the threat's always going to be there. And so how we counter that threat, how we mitigate that threat is really with these actions that we do within our communities, within our neighborhoods and stuff. And so I think it is even more important now that we continue to build these small projects, these really relational projects, because that creates a diverse movement, and diversity is our strength. And that is true at the biome level, and it's true at our movement level. So I think it's kind of my thought. Yeah.
Thank you, Sean. That's an excellent to end on. I really appreciate y'all taking some extra time to really get into this last question. And thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us, for joining us for this conversation. And thank you for who you are and the work that you all are doing. Really glad to be in conversation with you today. And thank you all for everyone in the room who was here to listen. Thank you. Have a good day.